Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. My name is Mako and I'm the Gallic witch. Yesterday was the first day of foraging for this year's spring and I was very excited for that. I found a lot of stuff actually. I was just planning on looking for violets and I ended up with dandelions and plantain and some other stuff that I think I'm going to show you later. So I'm gonna make a series that's going to be focused on some of the most common forageable plants that you can get that have some medicinal and magical properties, and show you how I get them, how I prepare them, and how I use them both as a druid and as a herbalist. Today we're going to start with the first plant I went looking for yesterday, which was violets, and we're going to make some violet syrup. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm doing is getting some clear water so that I can wash the violets that I picked up. It's one of the most important things you gotta remember if you're planning to do something with plants in general, or if you want to be kind of serious with your herbalism. You always wash whatever it is that you forage, no matter where you got it, no matter how clean you think it is a place, no matter how deep in the forest, no matter how far away from civilization. It doesn't matter, because it's not just a problem of pollution and like human waste. There are animals who have to do their own needs, of course, everywhere on the plants that you can forage, and some of these animals have bacteria and stuff in their pee that can make the plant dangerous for you. So always wash it. I tend to wash my plants at least 2 times, sometimes more, depending on how I feel that they need to be cleaned off. So that's what I did with the violets. And while I was letting them soak up the water, I was picking out all the stems and some of the white violets that I got, because I love white violets. They're not interesting for like the herbalism side of stuff. I just like how they look, so I keep them in my herbier, which I'm just going to look up what the English word for that is, because I don't really know what it is right now. That's what I'm doing right now, just picking out the stems, washing the flowers, and I'm going to change the water a couple of times until I'm satisfied. And once I am satisfied, I take out the violets. I'm being very careful, because if I crush them, they're going to lose some of what is going to give the taste and the color to the syrup as I make it. So I'm really careful. When I'm done getting the flowers out, I put them in a bowl and just leave them for like maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, as I let some of the water drip at the bottom of the bowl, and just get out. And when I'm satisfied with that, I get some water on the gas stove, and I warm it enough that it's like hot, like it's hot, but it's not boiling, because if you leave it to boil, you're just going to kill the taste and the color of the flowers. And when I'm done pouring the water over the flowers, I cover them and I leave them for an entire night, or like 24 hours. The next thing I did that day was prepare the dandelions that I picked. So I got flowers and leaves. The leaves I can use in salads, they're delicious, and in soup as well, but right now it's not really the time for soups, I think, so mostly for salads. And I can also use them in some of the preparation that I'm doing right now, so I'm going to show that to you later. Right now, what I'm doing is I am picking out the leaves from the flowers and just putting them aside for the moment. When I only have the flowers left with me, I get my special knife, which is just like a curved opinel, and I cut out the bottom of the flowers. I don't know if you've ever picked dandelion flowers before, but when you pick them, they have a sort of hard bottom that surrounds the flowers and keeps them tight. So when you cut that bottom, it kind of unravels like a ribbon, and you can remove that green part that kind of looks like a ribbon, and what you get, what you're left with is just the petals and kind of like the fluff. So same thing as before, I wash them more times than the violets, because dandelions tend to get dirtier just because of the way the petals are constructed. They tend to gather more smoke, more dirt, more dust, anything of the sort. So I wash them 3 times, and unlike the violets that color the water and give it taste, they're far less potent than dandelions, so I'm able to leave them to soak up the water longer without being worried that they're going to just lose all of their good stuff. And when I'm done rinsing them off, I get them out and I leave them to dry completely, which is going to take a little while. The next project I started was with plantain. I got a bunch of it because it is a very common plant, and same thing as before, I wash them. I wash them quite a lot because I use plantain for mostly to heal wounds, and the last thing you want is for the stuff you're using to heal your wounds to have bacteria or pollution in it or something. So I'm being very careful when I wash the plantain leaves. Same thing as before, I'm picking out, because there's always, especially when you pick plantain, which tends to grow very close to the ground, you're always picking up other plants and leaves and stuff, and you gotta be really careful because you don't want to leave poisonous stuff in the middle of your medicinal plants. So I'm very careful when I pick out all of that stuff. And when I'm done with that, I get my plantain. Same thing as before, I leave it to dry, and then with a pair of scissors I just cut it in, I chop it in rough bits, because what I want is for the juices of the leaves to start getting out of them, and cutting them is the best way for that to happen. When I'm done with that, I put them in one of my jars, which is something that I use only for herbalism, so that it's not cross-contaminated with something else. So I fill it up with the plantain leaves, and when I'm done, I take alcohol, which you can use whatever alcohol you want. It's better if it has no taste, no smell, and like no color, and it has to be at the very least 40 degrees. So I'm using vodka, and I will cover the leaves barely, just cover them barely with the vodka, because you want it to be very, very concentrated. And what I'm making right now is what I would call a mother tincture. A mother tincture is something that is very concentrated. It's the most concentrated form of a plant that you can get outside of using it fresh. It's even better than like a herbal tea or an infusion, because an infusion, what it does is you steep the plant in water and then you ingest that water. So it's great, but if you put it inside alcohol, the alcohol will actually draw out a lot more of the potency of the plant and leave you with a much stronger stuff in the end. So mother tinctures are some of the greatest form of herbal medicine that you can get. When my dandelion flowers are completely dry, I separate them in a couple different piles for the different projects that I have. So what I'm doing right now is I'm making some dandelion honey. So that's actually interesting because there are two ways of making dandelion honey. You can, like I'm doing right now, get your dandelion flowers completely clean and cover them with honey and leave it to incubate isn't the right word, but I can't find another one right now, to like infuse for a very long time, and you get honey which has medicinal properties of its own, and you add to it the medicinal properties and magical properties of dandelion as well as some of the taste. The second way of making dandelion honey is to get a ton, and I really mean like a ton of dandelion flowers, and get them in sugar and like cook them for a really long time. And what you're going to make actually is like vegan honey. So it tastes kind of similar, it's floral, it's very sweet. It's not exactly the same, of course, but for someone who refuses to interact with animal products, that's the closest thing you're going to get to actual honey. That's not what I'm making right now, but it's another way of making dandelion honey. Second recipe I'm making with my dandelion flowers is dandelion vinegar. So same thing as before, I'm getting some of my flowers in a bottle that is its only purpose is herbalism, but I'm also putting inside some of the dandelion leaves that I saved up earlier. Because vinegar as a herbal remedy is kind of the same as a mother tincture. It's slightly less potent because of course vinegar is less strong than alcohol, but it is stronger than an infusion. It's somewhere along the same potency as a decoction. And I think I'm just going to make a video one day where I explain all the ways, like all of those terms for herbal medicine, but you know. So, because I want to make something that is potent without using alcohol, I'm adding the leaves to just increase that potency as well as the flowers. So I fill up the bottle quite nicely. As you can see, I even press down so I can add more, because the more there is, the stronger the liquid I'm gonna get at the end will be. And when I'm satisfied with the amount of plant I have in there, I cover the whole thing with cider vinegar. The last thing I'm making with my dandelion flowers is some dandelion oil. Oil is, in my opinion, one of the most versatile and useful ways of preserving a plant's properties. If you could see like my entire table of my little workshop of herbalism, you would see I have many different kinds of oils that are made from plants. Because I just love how useful and versatile they are. So I'm getting all of my remaining dandelion flowers, which isn't much, but that's all I could get on that first day of foraging, and I'm covering it with olive oil. And like everything else I made that day, I will leave all of it to have a slow infusion time. So it's going to take a very long time, but the longer I leave it, the more potent it will be, which is one of the advantages, because I can just leave it as long as I want and it's going to work the same. Going back to the violets now, which I was very excited for. So that was the next morning, and I filtered the water and the violets separately so that I could get only the water. So as a reminder, I poured hot water on them and then left them for an entire night. And as you can see, I got a beautiful, vibrant, concentrated blue liquid, and I was in love with it. So I was able to fill up roughly a bottle and a half, which I think is somewhere around a liter. So I got my bottles completely filled up. You can't see it off screen, but I had something to like filter the flowers so they wouldn't fall inside the bottle. And when I was done with my bottles, I took them to the kitchen to transform what at that point was simply a decoction of violets and make it into an actual syrup. So I'm going to give you the recipe to make any sort of flower syrup. It's the same recipe for the poppy syrup I made the last spring, where I made a video to show it to you all. It's the same recipe when I made my elderberry syrup, which is still in the editing room and you're going to see very soon. And it is very simple, but it's possible to screw it up. So be very careful when you're making it, because it would be so sad to lose the beautiful, beautiful flower decoctions you can make. What you're going to take is a ratio of 1 to 2. So if you have 1 of liquid, you have 2 of sugar, and I'm being non-specific in terms of quantities, because what's important with this ratio is that it works no matter what the recipient is. So if you have 1 cup of water, you have 2 cups of sugar if you're an American. If you have 100 grams, or more like it's going to be centiliters, but if you have 100 grams of liquid, you have 200 grams of sugar. If you have 1 bottle of liquid, you have 2 bottles of sugar. It always works the same. As you can see, because I wasn't sure what my bottles were in terms of containers, and the second one wasn't filled all the way, so I couldn't just make a 1 to 2 ratio. I poured it all in a container and then marked it with like a marker, so I would know exactly how much liquid there was. And when I was sure of that, I just poured it all in a saucepan and added double the amount of sugar. Then I brought it to a hot temperature, but not boiling. If you let it boil, it's going to lose all of its taste and all of its pretty color. So just hot enough that the sugar is going to dissolve. That's roughly what you want to aim for. When I was happy with the dissolution of the sugar, I took it off the heat and let it to cool so it would thicken up. When the syrup was cool enough, I simply poured it in the bottles, which at this point you will notice that I had way more than I started with, just because of the added sugar. So instead of a bottle and a half, I had 2 bottles and a smaller one to the side. I also added a couple of drops of lemon to turn the blue liquid into a purple liquid, which I kind of regret now. I think it was prettier when it was blue, but that's just the way it is when you're making stuff. It sometimes doesn't turn out the way you prefer, but it's still very pretty when it's purple, and it tastes exactly the same. There's not enough lemon to change the taste of the syrup. And with the violet syrup bottled up, that was everything I made that day in my little herbalism workshop. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you learned something today. Like this video if you enjoyed what I showed you, and consider subscribing if you want to learn more about herbalism and druidic practices. And I will see you all next time.